Ooh. Well, today you're joining me on the banks of one of my local day tickets, and I've just come up for mid-afternoon, maybe into the evening, see how long I can push it before the wife beckons me home for tea. And I've already had one actually, which is good fun, a lovely common, probably around the £15 mark, lovely golden dark colours. So I'm just staying out because you know what it's like with surface fishing. You have to just keep on fishing and keep on hoping you get one more bite. But the reason for this video today is just to talk about this setup that I use for my surface fishing really. When I grew up fishing and doing surface fishing, I would just take one of my carp rods, which had probably been on the bottom, stick on a surface controller, and then sling it out and start fishing like that, which I got bites. There's no denying that you can't get bites that way. But I found that a 12-foot normal rod that I was using was heavier, bulkier, didn't quite have the same sort of balance you need when fishing on the surface. And like I said, yes, I caught fish, but also the strength in the 12-foot rods were a bit too much for some of the hook holds when you're bringing them in, because you're using smaller hooks. Maybe like I'm using a size 8 today, so it's not the tiniest of hooks, but it's smaller than what I normally use. I'm normally on a 4 or a 6. And also the lighted lines, like hook, they got fish right on my float. You want to be a bit more careful about those. I've just been done on camera, so sorry. I've just had a fish completely mug me off. You want to be a bit more confident that your hook holds are going to stay in place, especially when fighting the fish under the rod tips. And that's why I now always use a dedicated setup when I surface fish. So this isn't to say that you need to get this exact setup. I highly recommend you look into getting a dedicated surface fishing setup because it just makes it more enjoyable. You'll feel the difference when you're fishing with something that's dedicated for the job. And it's just great fun. So this, if you want to know, is the Daiwa Longbow X45 DF Floater Special. And I believe it's 1 3/4, does it say it on here? Oh no, 2 1/4 pound test curve. So it's quite soft for a 12-foot. I've got a fish right behind the mixer now. Oh man, how's that for timing? And paired up with this rod is the rather vocal, in a sec, if I can read it, has it come off, or has he just suddenly stopped? He still wants to come to order. So this is the Daiwa SS Tournament 2600. So it's quite a small reel, quite visually recognisable with a gold spool and everything. And it's a lovely little balanced reel for this setup. Because the rod is lighter, you don't want to be having a big bulky reel along with this rod because it's a lighter rod. So with the 2 1/4 pound test curve, it means you can really flick a controller really far actually. It's quite impressive because you're not casting as great a weights. You can still let the rod do the work for you. So I'm using a Fox bolt bubble today. I have used Nash bolt machines in the past, up to quite decent size ones as well. And you can cast them a good, probably 70 yards, I'd say. And I don't often fish that far with surface controllers, but it's nice to know that you can, even with a rod that for most people would say is a lighter, weaker rod than what you're used to using. So as I'm playing this fish right now, it's lovely. Like you saw how vicious that take was off the top, and it's off again, but it feels so progressive. And because it's a softer rod, it just absorbs all of those lunges. And where I'm using a 9-pound hook link, size 8 hook, I'm not worried about the hook hold. Of course, if it rubs on the bottom, there's not a lot I can do about that. It might break the hook link that way or whatever, but I'm not worried that the rod is overgunned or I'm putting too much pressure on the fish. All of these lunges, I hope you can see that. It's just, you're not feeling that knock that you'd often get with smaller fish. It's just really cushioned all the way down through the rod. Having said that, there's still enough backbone. So if you do need to give the fish a bit more stick, if it's going towards snags or whatever, you can put a bit more effort into it. But for the most part, fishing like this for a few hours after work, or this is work I know for me, but just taking a single light rod, bucket of mixers and getting fishing is so much fun. And I've always enjoyed surface fishing, even if I used my old rods, which were 12-foot, 2 3/4 or £3 or whatever. Yes, you'd still catch off the top, but oh, crikey, this is going some. It's just not the same as fishing with a dedicated setup. It's hard to get it across on camera how much fun it is, because I suppose it's almost like using a float rod for smaller fish. It's just, you feel every single part of the fight. You're so connected with the fish, and I'm probably enjoying this more just because this is one of my favourite methods as well, so that always helps. Oh, this fish is proper going somewhere. I haven't actually gained anything on him yet. He's still out pretty much where I hooked him. The negatives though, I have to say it's not all positives with having this sort of setup, is that if I was to fish at greater range on the surface, I probably would be limited somewhat. I've never had that being an issue so far. But the other one I would say is that because it's a softer action rod and it's easier to play a fish like this, it does mean that pretty much every single time I've hooked a fish, it's taken longer to get in than it would with a beefier rod, which is understandable. I'm not putting as much strength into the fish, so it's not having to battle against as much resistance, so it's not tiring him out as fast. And as you can see, clearly isn't tired out. So that is one thing to be aware of. If you're not someone that enjoys the fight, believe it or not, there's some people out there that are like that. I love the fight, I think it's really good fun. That's pretty much what you go fishing for. But some people don't enjoy the fight so much and just want to hook the fish and get it in the net as quick as possible. So this probably isn't the sort of thing you want to go for, because unless you're proper beast in it, you're not going to get the fish in the same amount of time you would with a stronger rod. And I've just seen this fish, it's probably about a 12-pound mirror, but it's so much fun. And I have had fish, even this season already, I've had 4 or 5 low 20s on this setup. And they are some of the hardest fighting sort of fish you can think of, a low 20 or upper double, stuff like that. So it's cope with them. Whether I'd want to go much bigger, so it's just about trying to go into these tree roots, I don't know. See, I'm having to put a bit more effort into that to get him away from this tree, and it's bent all the way down towards the butt, but I can feel I'm giving it a lot more resistance now, and I've steered it away from those roots. So the backbone's there if you need it, which is quite good. And of course the reel, as I've mentioned, is lovely because it's a balanced setup. It's nice and light for repeated use. When you're surface fishing, you're often stood up all day and casting multiple times. You don't want something that's weighing you down. It's just a lovely balanced little setup. The clutch is beautiful on it. It's so smooth and really easy to finally adjust. As you can see, it's set pretty perfect at the moment. It's not jolting, it's just progressively going into a tick, and then if it takes a run, it's off on one. What a lovely sound. I will get this one in a second. But yeah, this isn't necessarily the setup you need to go for. I would highly recommend it because it is very good. I've enjoyed it for the last few years, but there are other dedicated surface rods and reels out there. I think I've used a Fox setup before, which was just as nice. So I think the main thing of this video is, if you haven't tried a dedicated setup for surface fishing before, then it's probably a good time to try it, because it may just make you enjoy surface fishing that little bit more. Come on. Oh, he touched the net cord and he's gone again. But right under the rod tip, this is where sometimes you can lose a fish. And don't want to jinx it, because you can always still lose a fish, whatever, but because it's so much softer on the tip, all those little lunges where it thrashes its head, that was right under the rod tip then. The rod's pretty much bent double, and there was no issues. It just shook its head, the rod absorbed it, and it's off again. Off again. I'm hoping that camera's side on enough to show just how much this rod does bend. There's still plenty of beef in the butt section to get it in. But this is where I'd say that it takes a bit longer to get the fish in, because it's softer in the tip. When you get into this stage, they can often go up and down the margin quite a long time. But I enjoy it. And it tires them out quite a lot. He's going for those snags again. Come on, get your head up again. There we go. Come on, this time. A few gulps of air. Oi, and he's in. Oh, I couldn't have asked for better timing, could I? Talking about casting it, the setup, and then got a bite on camera. Doesn't always go that easily. Right, let's let him rest a few minutes, get everything set up, show you the fish, and then go home. Job done. Well, I guess it was about a 12-pound mirror during the fight. That's exactly what it is. Very welcome and great fun on that little setup. So if you've got this setup already, then great. You're probably already enjoying your fishing. If you haven't, then do look into it, or maybe look at a similar alternative to maybe your dedicated brand or someone you like already, and give it a try, because you won't regret it, and it's great fun. Sweet, let's get him back, and I'll see you again soon.